my last video, I talked about Introverted-Intuition as my child function, as John B. refers to the third function in a person's cognitive function order. I used the example of fictional stories to basically show how I limit my use of NI to areas of my life that are self-contained and safe for me to play around with, like a sandbox, without affecting the other areas of my life. So now I'm going to demonstrate a more specific example of NI coupled with TI, as I observe patterns in something that I would normally have no reason to theorize about other than just for fun. I'm going to analyze the MBTI types of the girls I've dated. Now, I realize that for most people, relationships are a part of real life, and that to analyze past relationships can actually be helpful in improving existing or future relationships. But me, I've never been in a long-term committed relationship. I'm not actively looking for anyone right now. I'm enjoying my single, independent life. So at this point, I just don't feel a need to take this topic seriously. But, I have been interested in various girls throughout my life, and I see that this is obviously a significant topic to pretty much everyone else. So I'm just seeing this as a perfect opportunity for me to gather a bunch of data from my own experiences and see whatever patterns I can observe, even if I have no intention of doing anything with it afterwards. So a while back, when I was first learning how to observe the cognitive functions in other people in order to type them, and I was having fun just typing the regular people in my life, at some point I ended up typing all the girls I ever dated. Now, an important disclaimer. I am by no means claiming to be any sort of expert at typing people. I didn't interview any of those people to assess their type. I never gave them a test to take or anything. So these types that I came up with are just my best guesses based on everything I remember about them. Remember, this is just for fun. I'm not planning to do anything with any conclusions I draw out of this. Also, since I've never had a girlfriend, I need to clarify what exactly constitutes this list of girls that I've dated. Basically, it's any girl that I had a romantic interest in, with whom I attempted to pursue a romantic interest, and who I intentionally spent more than an hour with exclusively for the purpose of spending time with her. So obviously that includes any girls that I've asked out on a date and then went out on a date with, but it also includes a few that I hung out with as friends and then developed a romantic interest, and I happened to express that romantic interest, and then they responded with, "Let's just be friends." So even with those criteria, it's still a fairly short list, but at least it's long enough for me to do some interesting analysis. Now, one more thing to keep in mind. I didn't go into this with any specific questions or objectives in mind. I just decided one day I was going to figure out their types and then see whatever there is to see. So I'm basically just going to walk you through that process. So, with that in mind, let's do it. What? Goatee? What goatee? I never had a goatee. What are you talking about? Alright. So the first girl that I'm going to count for this list is a girl that I knew in college that I was good friends with, and I happened to develop a romantic interest in her. And she was INFJ. Okay. And a few years after college, I briefly dated an ISTP. This was the one time that I actually used an online dating service. This was back in the 90s when they were free. And then in the following years, I dated a couple of ISFJs. And then there was an ENFJ, the only extrovert of the group. And then most recently, I dated an INFP, I think. With her, I keep going back and forth between INFP and INTP, but right now I think she's an INFP. Okay, so the first thing you might notice here is I suck at writing on whiteboards. The second thing you might notice is I seem to be drawn to introverts and feelers. Now, I'm actually not going to theorize about why that might be the case, because that would require some serious self-reflection, and that could possibly reveal some hidden, deep personal flaws within myself, and then this whole process would no longer be fun. So I'm going to skip that part. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the NF Geeks method to figure out the collective type for this group. Well, I don't know if NF Geeks invented it. It's just where I learned it. So if you look at each of the columns, you just basically tally them up. So there are more I's than E's. The S's and N's are tied. I'll put an X there for now. There are only F's. Yep, I am the mechanic. And there are more J's than P's. And according to Mike from NF Geeks, if there's a tie between S and N, it defaults to N. So put an N there. And this means the collective type for this group is INFJ. So I guess that would mean I have a tendency to date INFJs, even though there was only one INFJ out of this whole bunch. This pen has a cherry scent. What the heck? Anyway, okay, so yeah, INFJ. So coincidentally or not, INFJ is the ISTP's best match according to interpersonality. Their theory is that the INFJ, well, because the INFJ has the same functions as ISTP, they have each other's top functions. They can both appreciate and draw on each other's strengths if they're both mature enough to do that. And it makes sense to me because, I've always enjoyed talking with INFJs, and it's the one personality type that I enjoy interacting with the most. And that INFJ that I knew in college, I know it was her personality that I was attracted to, because, sure, she was kind of cute, but I didn't actually become interested in her for months. And it was only after spending a lot of time with her one-on-one and really getting to know her that I grew to like her as a person. We ended up being incompatible for other reasons, like different backgrounds, different values, and honestly, neither of us was really ready for a relationship back then. But just her raw personality, the way she connected with me on a deep personal level, and with such honesty and clarity, I'm obviously a sucker for that. But anyway, before I go off on this INFJ kick, here's an important question. So the collective type for this set is INFJ, but does that really indicate what types I'm attracted to? See, the thing is, these are the types that I actually ended up going out with. But you have to take into account the statistics of each type. Because, for example, INFJs are supposedly the most rare type, while ISFJs are the most common female type. And that alone could actually explain these two ISFJs. Because, one important requirement for me to date someone is I have to meet her, or at least be aware that she exists. So, my dating history would obviously be affected by actually meeting. And if sensors are statistically more common than intuitives, and I've dated just as many intuitives as sensors, then that might suggest that I'm more likely to be attracted to intuitives. And who knows, maybe that's why N is the tiebreaker. In fact, when I look at this list and I look at the 3 S types versus the 3 N types, I realize that the S types were the ones that I was attracted to shortly after meeting them. Whereas I developed an interest in the N types after spending some time getting to know them, just like I mentioned with the INFJ. Which suggests that it really was the N types personalities that I was drawn to. And with the S types, I was probably attracted to them for more superficial reasons, like common interests, or life circumstances, or whatever else. Okay, so let's see what interesting patterns we can observe here. By the way, I tried to work the cognitive functions into a theory, but I just couldn't come up with anything that really made sense. There's a lot of FE going on here, but it's mostly auxiliary FE. So I guess I'm somewhat attracted to FE, but only so much of it. So it just always ended up coming back to the 4 letters. Okay, so here's something interesting I noticed with the J types and the P types. The P types were the ones who were more open to dating me. These 2 P types, the ISFP and the INFP, those were the ones where I asked them out on a date, actually called it a date, and they were okay with me calling it a date, and then after the end of that first date, they were interested in going on a second date. And then eventually things didn't work out for whatever reasons. The J types were a lot quicker to decide that they weren't interested in me. And in fact, for each of those cases, I know that they wouldn't have even gone out with me in the first place if I didn't have some other excuse for spending time with them. Like, either we were already friends and they just saw it as hanging out with a friend, or we were talking about something and then I did the classic, hey, let's continue this conversation over dinner. And then as soon as I mentioned the idea of moving beyond friendship, then they LJBF'd me. And if you think about it, this actually fits the definition of judging versus perceiving. The perceivers are more open to whatever may come their way because they like to gather as much information as they can before making a decision. Whereas the judgers want to make decisions as soon as they reasonably can. So basically, these 2 P types weren't necessarily more attracted to me. They were just more open to dating me because they were perceivers, and thus more open to new experiences in general. Whereas the J types knew right away that they weren't interested. So, now I know. The next time I ask a perceiver out, and she says yes, I know not to get my hopes up. Anyway. Okay. The 1 extrovert. What's up with that? I actually consider her to be a special case because out of all the girls that I dated, she's the one that I respect and admire the most to this day. Even though I've long since realized that our lives just aren't a good match for each other, and quite frankly, I just can't keep up with her extroversion, I absolutely don't regret ever pursuing her, because the process of getting to know her was a good learning experience for me, and I became more aware of the types of godly standards that I should look for in a woman, and by observing her, I sort of got this picture of what that might look like. And I suppose a good match for me might be an introverted version of her. In other words, an INFJ. So, it just keeps coming back to the idea that my ideal mate is an INFJ. And if that's true, then I have a very slim chance of actually meeting, falling in love, and marrying one. Because I've got all these factors working against me. INFJs are rare. They tend to marry young. And I'm over 40. So either I'd have to find someone who's either way younger than me and yet still emotionally and mentally compatible, or find someone who's closer to my age, which is even more rare, and who doesn't have a whole lot of undealt with baggage and is willing to put up with whatever baggage I may have accumulated over the years. And even then, if I managed to meet such a woman, we'd both have to be attracted to each other, which in itself is a rare thing for me. Plus, there's the fact that I'm not even looking very hard, which slows down the process even more. So, if my soulmate really is an INFJ, then I suppose I'll marry her when I'm about 70. And that is my NI conclusion for today. Thank you.